script. Who do you think I am? Hi, guys.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome back to our channel. I'm Megan.
I'm Dwayne.
And we are the Blended Family Marriage Coaches. That's who we are and what we do. If you're new here, lately we've been talking about blending families instead of blended families because it's really all a process, right? It's always a verb. Blending, is that a verb?
Yes.
It's always a verb of blending together. It's never just finished and we are officially blended. It's always a process. So we're talking about the things that we wish we would have discussed prior to blending our blended family. We're talking about things that we coach others to discuss prior to them blending their blended families, and things that might come up mid-collision, because we always say we didn't blend, we collided. And then we needed to pull those pieces apart and figure out how to blend them together. So today we're talking about step-parent expectations, and I'm super excited, so stay tuned. So for the very best advice for your blended family marriage, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. It should be right there under Dwayne. And don't forget to ring the bell.
Ding dong.
So that way you don't miss a single episode of the Blended Family Marriage Coaches. If you like this video, don't forget to, like this video. And as we always say, remember, marriage is hard, but blended family marriages are harder. And as we say that, you guys, I want to talk about what it's like to set expectations for step parents prior to getting married and why that's so important. So if you missed our video, we talked about things that we wish we would have done when we were blending our families or before we blended our families. And if you want to catch that, I'll link it right there for you to watch later, and I'll also put it in the description box below. But that video, one of the things that we talked about is we never really navigated what the expectations are from the step parents, and that is so important. The only advice that we really got is our pastor in our premarital counseling, and his heart was in the right spot for sure. He said, you never treat the children as if they're steps. That's no longer a thing anymore in your house. If they're a child in your home, they're a child in your home, and step parents don't exist. So you don't use that. And we don't very often when we're talking about our children, unless we want to, that's Dwayne's daughter, or, Dwayne's 3 or my 3. But when we address them, for example, at school events or different things like that, his kids are my kids and my kids are his kids, because they are. We are just as responsible for each of the 6 kids as another one of the 6 kids, regardless of where they came from. I feel equally responsible for his kids as I do for mine. So they are just as much mine in my heart and in my soul as my 3 are. So that is true in that spirit and in that sense. But the truth is that my expectations for Dwayne, for my kids, I'm going to put words in your mouth here, are significantly different than his expectations were for me, for his kids.
Right.
Because of the different custody schedules and the different custody arrangements. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, so I totally agree. There definitely was a time when you were more parenting more with my kids than I was with your girls and everything like that. So there definitely was an adjustment there. There definitely was a time when that relationship wasn't as developed as what it is today.
When we got married, we had full custody of Dwayne's kids, and mine were holidays and weekends. No, just holidays and school vacations. So I was full-time mom to his kids, and that obviously sets me up for a different expectation in how to discipline and how to parent and how to raise those kids than it does for Dwayne with my kids when they were there on holidays and vacations and things like that. So it totally was different. But if we could have had those conversations beforehand and been able to have the verbiage, I always say, I may not be your mom, but I am the mom of this home. And that gives me the right to do things like enforce boundaries. And one of the things that we never did was sit down and discuss what are those boundaries. What are the rules of the bottom house? We had our expectations set pretty well with when it comes to church. On Sunday morning, everybody's in church. If they're in the bottom house, they're in church on Sunday morning. We had that set up. But what about the rules? And what happens if something happens that we need to discuss amongst each other? How do we approach that? And one mistake that Dwayne and I made often was not mistake, I don't want to say that. One issue that Dwayne and I had often was, how do we parent these children in front of them, but then at the same time have the conversation behind closed doors that I wish this would have been different, or I wish that would have, or have you considered this, or maybe you're being too hard, or anything like that. We never really, we kind of stumbled upon that instead of actually sitting down and having the conversation. Okay, so when we are parenting, we support each other, which I think is huge for step parent expectations. Dwayne has to trust me with his children. He has to know that my heart is in the right place and I love them enough to be able to discipline them, to be able to correct them, to be able to love them. And if ever there's a time when maybe I crossed a line, or maybe I did something that he disagreed with, or there just needs to be more discussion because I don't understand where that came from. We need to have that discussion behind closed doors and not in front of the children.
Right. There are definitely times when conversations need to be had in front of the children, but there are certainly times when maybe there's a disagreement upon the parenting style or how a situation was handled. That doesn't need to be discussed in front of the children. You just need to know that as a parent, you need to support one another in front of the kids, so there's a united. Because if kids are really good, kids are smart. I mean, we don't give them enough credit. Kids are really smart, and they know that if they can get the one parent on their side or whatever, then they can play that game.
We don't want to ever teach that your kids don't get to see conflict. I think that too often parents fight behind closed doors, and kids then get married later and they think that parents don't fight. Married people don't fight, and that's not a true expectation. Conflict is going to happen. I hate to say fight because we try not to, but sometimes conflict does happen, and it did happen. So we don't encourage conflict to happen behind closed doors. Our goal, we always say this, our goal is to raise good adults, not good kids. And good adults will see the example set by their parents. So if we example, this is healthy conflict, this is how you resolve conflict. Yes, it's possible to have opposing views, I know, insane in today's world, and still come together and love each other. Those are ideas and concepts that our kids need to see every day. Not every day, we don't conflict every day, but they need to be able to see that. But at the same time, they don't need to see me fighting him about them, or him fighting me about the kids, because that's just unhealthy. And like Dwayne said, that'll give them a leg up, and they'll be able to it'll be like they're ganging up on us. So it's so important that those conversations regarding the kids happen behind closed doors, and they're never dragged into it. Children of divorce so often feel responsible for their parents' divorce, that when newly married couples have arguments, those children are going to feel responsible for that as well. And when they hear that it's about them, that's going to make them even more responsible. So that needs to happen behind closed doors always. And that's one of the expectations that I wish Dwayne and I would have had the verbiage, or somebody to just tell us, hey, by the way, shut up and go talk about this later. And that's hard, right? And that might mean that once we talk about it, I'm very humbled. And Dwayne says, for example, I think you were too harsh on them when you said that. And I agree. I might need to apologize. I might need to approach the kids and say, hey, look, I am really sorry that I lost my temper there. Will you please forgive me? And that kind of humbleness is also important to display to the kids. And I think that that's something that I really wish that Dwayne and I would have known about and had somebody talk to us about. And we really got good at it towards the end when they were getting ready to leave the nest. But it took that long to be able to have those kind of conversations. So another false expectation I think that we bring into blended families is that we're going to agree all the time. And there honestly were conflicts that Dwayne and I had about parenting our children that we would have had regardless if they were our biological children that we had together, or if they were or if it was like it is, and they are actually one of our stepchildren. We have different parenting styles, and that's a reality. That's a reality that a lot of original families suffer from when they're trying to raise their children, that they have different parenting styles and different expectations of their children. So we think that when we blend, we're not going to have different parenting styles. We are perfect together.
Right.
That's such a false expectation. I come with one parenting style, Dwayne comes with another parenting style, and together we had to figure out, how is this going to work between the two of us? And the kids had to figure that out also. What's Megan's parenting style? What's Dwayne's parenting style? How are we going to do this? You know, the kids had new expectations once I was involved, and my kids had new expectations once Dwayne was involved. So that's something that I think that I wish we would have been able to know as well, that we're going to have the same issues that we had with our co-parents. That yes, I believe kids should behave a certain way, and Dwayne believes that maybe that's kind of not necessary, and vice versa. And I think that that's so important, because that would have set us up for a whole lot of not disappointment, if that makes sense. We would have not been disappointed a whole lot more, because when we felt like I was coming with my parenting style and he was coming with his parenting style, it kind of felt like we were failing again. And I think that false expectation of parenting styles when you're raising kids is huge.
Right. I think that also when it comes to parenting styles, that's something that really, to a certain extent, it's kind of hard to put your finger on. Like, I don't know if we would have...
We couldn't have had that conversation, right? We couldn't have said, so tell me about your parenting style.
Right. Yeah, I would have been like, I don't know. So to a certain extent, parenting styles is something that you kind of have to fill out as you're going along. But you need to be able to have that conversation of, okay, like, that's not, I don't think that that's acceptable, and have that conversation, like you said, behind closed doors, so that you can then come with a better understanding of everyone's parenting style. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And have realistic expectations of each other as well. We set ourselves up for disappointment when we come at it with an expectation of, this is going to work out perfectly, and everything is going to be amazing, and we're going to just fall in step with each other, and we're going to parent these children, and it's just going to be heavenly. But a realistic expectation of, I've never raised a teenager before. I don't know what these hormones are, so I don't necessarily know what I'm doing either. But together we can figure this out. Right. And that's another thing too, is to be understanding that oftentimes in blended families, you're raising maybe a 17-year-old and a 7-year-old,
right,
or a 17-year-old and a 3-year-old. And you need to know that parenting styles are going to change based on the child that you're parenting. We have a lot of kids that fall in the same age group. In fact, we have 2 20-year-olds right now, right? Our middle kids are 20.
Yes.
Yeah. We have 2 20-year-olds right now and we always have 2 of the same age usually, but they all fall in the same range. And it's also important to remember that those 2 girls, while they are both middle children, my middle child and Dwayne's middle child, they are so different. And different parenting styles are important there as well.
Oh, I think that's so key to really understand that when it comes to parenting styles, that each child is not going to be parented the same way, and make sure that you have that understanding, because you can't, let's just face it, you cannot parent a boy the same way that you can girls, and we have 5 girls and 1 boy.
And we can't parent any one of those 5 girls the same either.
Right, exactly.
We don't do a lot of parenting anymore. We are raising adults, and that's fun, and it's amazing to come on the other side of that and be able to, I can honestly say that my older girls are my best friends next to Jesus and Dwayne. So it's fun to come into that kind of relationship, but it's because of the people and the adults that have had an influence in their lives to make them the adults that they are. Right. But it's so important. We see that all the time on Facebook groups, in step parenting Facebook groups, and even our own. Like, when will my husband love my kids like he loves his? or treat my kids like he treats his. That's such a false expectation to
right.
set up for in a blended family.
Right.
Yes, there should be fairness. Yes, there should be love. You should never discipline a child unless you love them. And if you don't love them, that's something that you need to work towards.
Right.
Those are all things that you need to figure out and know before you step into that blended family. However, things are never going to be fair.
Right.
We had to put some restrictions on our son that we never thought that we would have to put on anybody,
Right.
much less on one of our children. We had to figure out, you know, pre-teenage girls are not fun creatures. They're just not. And we had to figure out, what does that look like? And each one of them, as they came through that pre-teenage age, each one of them was different.
Right.
All 5 of them were just, honestly, aliens that eventually were replaced with these kids that we loved. But that was a struggle for us. And that is such a false expectation. Treating kids the same is a false expectation. And there's a difference between loving them and treating them the same.
Mm-hmm.
You should love them. You should love them full-heartedly. You even love them differently. I love my youngest daughter, who is 14, almost 15 right now, a whole lot differently than I love my oldest, who is 21 and expecting her own. So it's silly to think that I'm going to treat them the same or love them the same.
Right.
And those are some key expectations. Right. And maybe that will help you navigate, why doesn't my spouse treat my kids the same way? Don't seek that. Don't want that. Treat your kids individually and in their needs.
Right.
If Dwayne were to treat my middle daughter the same way that he treated his middle daughter when we first got married, he would have pushed her away like that.
Yeah. Definitely.
And thankfully, Dwayne knew enough to say, okay, this isn't my daughter. This isn't the same kid that I raised, that I've been responsible for. I need to treat her a little bit differently.
Right.
And he did, because she needed that. So I think that that's so important. That's an expectation, that treat all kids the same in a blended family. No. Don't even treat all kids the same in a nuclear family. Right. Why would you do that to them? That is something, and I've always heard this said, don't seek fairness. Don't seek balance. You're never going to find it, especially in a blended family. Right. What you need to seek is peace. And seeking peace in your blend, seeking peace in your marriage, seeking peace in your parenting styles will go a long ways, as opposed to looking for fairness or balance. Right. Seek peace.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
So that's it. We didn't really have the points that we normally do. I just wanted to discuss some of the parenting expectations that we experience in blended families and what to talk about. Give you guys some talking points on how to come at this from a okay, we've been there, and have you considered this kind of scenario? I'm excited for you guys. Let us know if you like this video. We really appreciate it. Subscribe to our channel if you want to see more of this. Don't forget to ring the bell.
Ding dong.
So that way you don't miss a single episode. And we will see you guys next week. Bye, guys.
See you guys.